And good morning, everyone. Here from Bendigo in central Victoria, Australia. I just want to pay my respects and acknowledge the elders of this land, of the First Peoples, the Dja Dja Wurrung, of the elders past, present and future, and acknowledge that their struggle is part of the wider class struggle here in Australia, and no doubt the world as well. They are fighting the same forces as we are. Well, we're on the eve of the US elections. Well, elections have been going on over there, but this is obviously for them. We'll be in sound asleep. Probably we won't know the results, or may know the results tomorrow morning our time, or obviously during the late of the week. Hopefully, for everyone's sakes over there, things will calm down to a certain degree. There's a lot of tension happening over there. I was reading an interesting article this morning in our local newspaper, the Bendigo Advertiser, and we've got a few American expats, US expats living here, and they are deeply concerned for everyone over there. They said the tension's pretty intense. It's not just over Trump and Biden, it's over anything. I mean, it's just getting down to some really botanic arguments, and people have been divided over. The division is just extraordinary, and it certainly is very scary for them as well. They said they're fortunate to live here in Australia. We're not as polarised here in this country at the moment. Look, thank you, thank God for that. I certainly we don't want to be going down that path just because someone's has a difference of opinion. We have to actually pathologically hate each other and wind up taking up arms against each other. We're hearing reports of shops having to board up their windows and doors and taking ammunition off the shelves. Neighbourhoods actually arming themselves a whole lot. And I just think, well, it's just shut. But this is just a reflection of the systematic crisis of capitalism. I had a discuss with Dust the other day, and no doubt we'd also mentioned with Caleb Morpan. What you're seeing here is actually a reflection of the systematic crisis of capitalism and imperialism in the US. Well, we all know what will happen when Trump gets in again. There will be a clampdown on a lot of people as well. And we also know with Biden, if he gets in, there'll be a massive clampdown as well. So if someone asked me who's the lesser of two evils, I'd say neither. I'll just quote George Galloway: they're the same cheeks of the same backside, or the cheeks of the same backside. And really, I would not, and I'm not going to say don't go out and vote. That's actually not right to say. So do that. But I think, look, if anyone asks, I'll leave that up to your own decision who you'd like to support. And there's many other candidates running, I'm led to believe. So look, we'll have a look at the alternatives. But when it comes down to the end of the day, it just shows you the complete reflection of the systematic crisis of capitalism. It also shows at the same time too the quality and calibre of the candidates. And look, let's face it, either one gets in the other, it's a capitalist class that's going to win out at the end of the day. It's going to be nothing done for the working class and common people there in the US. They are still going to be in a bad depression state, and the conditions are just turning into horribly worse there. But look, I do feel for you people over there, for those US comrades. I do feel for you. Many other people do as well. We do stand in solidarity with you. Look, just on this too, I'd like to say, stay safe. Caleb actually did a great live this morning, and Caleb Morpan, and he actually just said, "Look, is it your fight? Really? It's just time. Look, let's pick our time to pick the fight. Is it worth to actually getting killed or badly injured in that over? No, I don't think so. If we're going to struggle for a government of action that fights for working families in both our countries, I think we need to actually bring up our own strategy and pick our fights. Don't let them and don't have them picked for us. We do need to make sure we've got to be good. We need to be strategic about these things. Theory is great, but it needs to be put into practice, and that way we need to develop a strategy and moving forward. So that's where I'm at the moment. Well, look, it's a day at a time. I know it's pretty intense. I don't think a lot of people are hoping it's going to be over. No doubt, whoever does become the president over there, it certainly will reflect relations here happening in Australia. The media is at the moment, also the liberalised type media. If Trump gets in, it'll be a bad thing for Australia. Biden, Murdoch's polarising type nature is probably as long as his class position is ratified, we probably wouldn't have an issue. Who's either has power, Biden or Trump, because he knows he's going to win out at the end of the day. The other thing as well, look, for us here in Australia, obviously, yes, there will be things affecting us one thing or the other, because Australia, and there's no doubt, caught up in US foreign policy. We're part of that US military bloc in the Pacific, and obviously we do get our orders from Washington, where when it comes down to military matters and other foreign matters as well. The other thing, actually, to bring up too about elections, there's just been over the weekend a recent state election in the state of Queensland, and obviously the Labor government was re-elected with an increased majority. The Greens did pretty well too. They actually grabbed another seat. But what was actually satisfying was seeing Clive Palmer's United Australia Party. For those of you who don't know Clive Palmer, he's a multi-billionaire in coal mining predominantly. He's obnoxious, he's bad, he's horrible. He's tried to manipulate a lot of elections over the last 10 years because Clive is about Clive. He's only worried about his own class interest. He couldn't care less if Australia is completely destroyed, as long as he can get his coal out of the ground and other things as well. But his rate went down, which was good. His wife was running, and they didn't have any seats. Mind you, they didn't gain any seats in the Queensland Parliament either. And another great bit of news is One Nation, Pauline Hanson's One Nation, another radical right-wing party that's obviously inspired by Trump-style politics, lost their seats as well. So it's good to see that. It was interesting because Queensland was traditionally, people think there'd be a hotbed of Trump-style politics, to put it that way, of home of an extreme right, and actually have the old deep south type politics of Mississippi of the 50s and 60s. Well, yeah, it's interesting how that turned around as well. So let's watch this space. I think people are over it. I think they're over the Murdoch media as well. And I explained this in the last, one of my last videos, or the last one live I did with Dust James as well. Interesting in just how powerful Murdoch is. He owns 70% of the media here in Australia. And when I was actually, yes, I did talk about it in one of my previous videos, because there was a petition that our former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd developed, and obviously over 350,000 signatories was the petition on that petition sent to the federal parliament. What the federal parliament or Commonwealth Parliament wishes to do with it, will they do with it? We'll wait to be seen. But I think it's a good campaign this petition was about actually not just addressing this issue of Murdoch owning 70% of the media, but actually breaking up his empire, taking him on, because he has been a polarising figure in our society as well. We've got newspapers like the Herald Sun here in Victoria, otherwise known as the Herald Scum, the Daily Telegraph in Sydney, or New South Wales, known as the Smelly Graph, and obviously and other obnoxious papers like the Courier Mail in Queensland, the Advertiser in South Australia, NT Times, Not News in the Northern Territory, and so on and so on and so on, and the Australian as well, otherwise known as the Un-Australian. They're just obnoxious papers. They are. I mean, the journal. There is no journalism, as far as I care. That's not genuine journalism. It's not even independent, even in the liberal sense. It's not. It's actually it's just the quality of it. It's just gone down the tube anymore. There's hardly anything that's good that comes out of it, and really the bar has been lowered completely. With the Murdoch empire, and obviously with his live television style channels. We have Sky News and Fox News here as well. His dominance in the sporting arena. We hardly get any free to air sports now. It's all now have to either subscribe to Fox or Sky News and others out there. And that's just used to be, when I was a young child, it was all free to air. And it was there for everyone to enjoy. But no, you have to have money to enjoy things in life, apparently. That's what capitalism says to us. So, but it was good. I'm not saying, look, what happened in Queensland is it's going to lead to any revolutionary change. Sure, the Labor Party is not a great bastion of revolutionary socialism at all, far from it. But what it was also some of the analysis, people are over it. This whole complete extreme right-wing polarisation has been happening as well. Things do change though. This is just at the moment of what's happening. It's actually a good reflection too. There was actually a swipe at the federal government, because the whole COVID-19, the federal government's been attacking those. Various state governments have been putting on border restrictions, using lockdowns and that so we can get on top of this virus as well. Here in Victoria, we've now had another day of 0 cases and 0 deaths as well. We have actually, the numbers have plummeted down, which is a good thing for us. Is gradual lifting of restrictions. The border restrictions are actually imposed on us by 2 respective state Liberal national governments, New South Wales and South Australia, but the federal government's not attacking them, obviously. They're attacking Queensland. And people supported the border restrictions. Yes, we don't want this COVID-19 spreading everywhere. Who wants it, really? Going back to business as usual. We've seen what's happened overseas where everything's gone back business as usual. And I like to actually have a little bit of a swipe at all these COVID-19 conspiracy theorists and people who think, oh, well, let's do herd immunity and everything else. If you're young and if you get this virus, yes, sure, you will recover. But what you don't realise is one thing, is the long-term health effects on your body. And you're going to have a long-term illnesses and other effects on your body again. Yes, the elderly, people who are sick have obviously died from it, but even too, the very healthy can die from this as well. This is not a virus. This is not a virus that we say, oh, well, the deaths have been minimum, and let's not worry about it. Let's all go back to full thing, and let's not control people. And the way the Murdoch media, everyone has been carried on with the federal government. Everyone's been locked up in their houses. No, we're not locked up in our houses. No one's put us in a cell and taken away the key and told to keep there. You can still get out and exercise. And I mean, now we can certainly get out and about. But we just had, these things had to get under control and bring this situation out of control, because the death toll here in Australia could have been a lot higher. And because Victoria itself geographically is a small state, but with a very high population. New South Wales has the biggest population, but a much geographically bigger state. We're just a little bit behind by probably 100,000, 200,000, but in a smaller geographical area, things had to be done. Have I got absolute trust in the state government? Absolutely not completely. I've got my criticisms about the state government as well, but it had to be handled a particular way. Otherwise, this could have got out of control even more. There were mistakes made. Certainly there was. There's a Royal Commission into that at the moment. And look, instead of getting angry about it, no one knew how to handle this when it first came about. I mean, if we heeded the warnings prior to this, China warned us as well prior to all this, but maybe there would be another thing. Maybe it would be a different outcome as well. But the federal government, just going back onto that, they've done nothing. They've done very little to combat this pandemic. They've left it up to the state governments. And when those state governments have tried to do the right thing, getting heavily attacked by federal government, by funding whatever. And those who don't are obviously politically aligned with the federal government get a nice pat on the back, and they've done very little as well. So we just got to remember there's a lot of politics involved in that. Trump does the same, I believe, in the US, congratulates the Republican governors, but anyone that's a Democratic governor gets heavily attacked and criticised as well. So instead of pulling politics to a side and think, okay, we have a pandemic here, these things are happening, let's have a unified national approach to this that ensure that we can get through this virus, find a cure for it as well, not go on the attack and start criticising other countries and threatening them with economic sanctions, whatever. We need to get on with this, cooperate, have peaceful cooperation with the rest of the planet, how we go about this and developing a cure. Sure, a vaccine might be on the horizon, but a vaccine's only there to vaccinate itself against, but it doesn't stop the COVID-19 being around, and it could mutate. Could. I'm not a medical expert, but we've known that viruses do mutate as well. So just those things, but no, they didn't. Instead, let's go on the attack. Let's listen to Murdoch and co, and let's listen to the capitalist class. Oh no, let's get back to business as usual. We've got to get the economy going, and it just shows you just how much the capitalist class thinks of the rest of the population. It just shows you what Murdoch thinks of us as well. Doesn't care if it'd be 100,000 deaths, a few 100,000, which would be devastating for Australia. We're only a small population. We're only a population around about 25 million, give or take, probably 100,000 either way. And for those, I mean, California's got a bigger population than what we do. And I understand if we lose, say, 500,000 people, that'd be devastating for Australia. Really devastating. So, and no doubt, well, the amount of millions of people who are going to be dying from this around the world still be devastating as well. And no one, since when did people like Murdoch and very respected governments of America the Commonwealth government here or in the British government, how dare they think just to let this go through? And what right have they got to turn around and let elderly people die? What, the elderly people haven't got a right to live either, or your young children pass away, or anyone with a sickness. It's certainly, and I know the Malthusians and others out there would like to, oh, this would be a great way to reduce the population as well, which really, who in the mind right on this planet has got the right to think that as well? They don't. I just want to put it out there. I've had enough of the COVID-19 conspiracy theorists. I just really had enough of you guys people going on about our freedoms and that. Of course, capitalism's clamping down. We know that. Obviously, we will rise up. But obviously, I just want to put the challenge to them. When we have a union demonstration, when we have a big union march, where are they? Are they supporting workers in struggle? Are they supporting workers on picket lines to improve their wages and conditions? Are they supporting us in against anti-imperialist wars? They'd be nowhere to be seen. It's all about them. About them not having to wear a face mask and that, and about libertarian top freedom. And I am sick of it. Well, they're not scientists. They're not scientists. They're not experts on nothing. And also, too, warning: if anyone walks into a shop or a supermarket, whatever, just to take into account that's someone's workplace. Don't go abusing workers in there if they have asked you to put a face mask on. It's there for safety. Wearing face masks reduces the risk, and it may not completely stop the spread of the virus, but it will reduce the risk. And being from a trade union background, being an organiser, and I deal with occupational health and safety, you're always trying to reduce the risk, hopefully to eliminate it altogether. There's no risk at all. So risk reduction has to happen, and because otherwise this gets out of hand. That either here in Australia, it could be quite devastating for us. Yes, we're in the summer, we're coming into that, warmer weather, but it's not a guarantee to stop the spread either. Let's just, it's a day at a time at the moment, but things are looking quite up here in Australia at the moment, with certain restrictions lifting. There is now a review of the border closures. Day at a time. I've actually spoken to my mother this morning on the phone. She lives in Sydney, and I said, well, look, hopefully I might be able to be up there for Christmas time, see the rest of the family there, and also too to see my dad in Orange as well. Lives there in New South Wales, but they're elderly. My stepdad's elderly, and they're certainly in a higher risk category as well. So that's we'll see, just a day at a time at the moment. Hopefully we keep it 0 cases, no more deaths. We're on top of this as well. So fingers crossed. But that's obviously with the elections here as well. I mean, there won't be any federal election till about late next year. At least it'll be called for any time after November 2021 through to May 2022. So it'd be interesting to see how the state of things play out from now to then. And obviously with the Queensland elections, sure, Labor got back in again, but the reality is, at the end of the day, it was also a slap in the face to this whole Trump-style polarisation and this extreme right wing as well. So in some aspects, yeah, that was a good thing. Is capitalism still going to continue? Yes, it is. There wasn't a revolution by any means. That's where we're at the moment. Going on to the state of the economy, though. And this, for us in Australia as well, I was just reading an article yesterday in The Age, which is another Victorian paper, insolvency surge alarm after retail bonanza. And what they're saying from January onwards, well after the Christmas break, New Year period, there's going to be a lot of smaller companies be made insolvent. What they didn't say in the article, though, is what the actual get down to the root cause of why it was becoming insolvent. It's because, one, workers will not be able to afford what's produced anymore. We at the moment in Australia, during this COVID-19, we had a federal government scheme put in called JobKeeper. So if an employer couldn't actively keep you there, well, in order to retain your job, the government paid you, I think we had up to $750 a week or $1,500 a fortnight. That was all about to keep you employed, but also able to buy things, mainly more so essentials at that time, to keep things going. Well, obviously now that's all now been rolled back. It's been that now money's been reduced, and by January that'll be gone altogether. And obviously a lot of people are going to be out of work. high unemployment will increase. They're saying, oh, we're going back to boom times and good times. Well, maybe for multinationals, anyone that benefits out of anything like out of recession or depression is the multinational, right? But for the small business, no. And the reason being is because workers haven't got the spending ability to buy what's produced or consume what's produced. And this is still what these capitalist papers don't know. I mean, I'm not a big praise and a big awe of the age by any means, but well, I've certainly got a lot of criticism about it, but it's a little bit more informative than compared to what you get from the Murdoch press. And so sometimes I have to analyse a few articles that catch my eye. And when I read that, it was quite interesting how they came about. Yes, in small businesses, be it if you're self-employed or maybe employ about 2 or 3 people, you might own a newsagent, you might own a small cafe that have got the possibility of being insolvent, of course, because the reality is the spending power is not going to be there. And this is just going back to the simple thing of the root cause of every economic crisis throughout capitalism is the crisis of overproduction. Too much stuff's being produced and not enough workers are able to consume what's produced anymore because they cannot afford it. And I think we've always got to keep on our minds what is primary for all this. Yes, there are symptoms. We've had pandemic this year. We've also had other things as well, such as wars and everything else that might have put the drain on the economy. But the reality is, at the end of the day, what's the cause is a systematic crisis of overproduction. Marx and Engels said that back in the 1800s. Even Lenin, Stalin, Mao, the rest of them have even said that throughout the ages. And so let's keep that in our mind. That's just what's happening overall. You look at Australia here. Sure, we'd like any increase in employment. What it is, just for those of you who are overseas, and look, welcome all. I'm glad to see Comrade Reese has joined us from Britain. Welcome aboard, Comrade. Also, too, I recommend following Comrade Reese's on YouTube. He does some excellent YouTube clips as well. And also welcome to Vovism, and also Maggie too from Sydney. Welcome aboard. And anyone else that's watching it at the moment, please share this far and wide as possible from YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, any other social media forum you use. Obviously, what we're trying to do here before going any further is trying to build our infrastructure here, for doing my part to build our infrastructure here in Australia. I'm actually inspired by Caleb Maupin, Dust James, who I do now. We're doing that working class revolt. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. In the UK, in the US and the UK, obviously Comrade Reese has joined us, the CPGBMLs and Workers' Party. Love George Galloway's Moats as well. He's on every Sunday night and Wednesday night, UK time. That'll be our Monday morning and Thursday morning here. Obviously, there's some great work happening around the world. I think the rest of the world would like to know, what are we doing here in Australia? And as Fidel Castro said once, if you want to help revolution, get it going in here in your own respective countries. And that's what I'm doing my part. It's not about me, just trying to do my part to help it, to move things along here in Australia as well. And we certainly need to have our infrastructure. And we certainly need to build this up, having live forums. I'm quite interested in doing a lot of interviews, online studies as well. I think one thing that has been good about this, it came out of this pandemic, nothing good about the pandemic, but when I'm sorry, I was nearly going to said that, but what I said, what's come out of it, it's forced us all to use these type of communications. Before that, we used to just either wait till either something on YouTube or some sort of event, but we've now actually forced us now into a situation where we can communicate more. And it'd be good to actually have dialogue for a lot more comrades from overseas and talk about strategy about moving forward, because we do need to come up with strategies as well. Theory and practice go together, they're not separate. The old saying is, theory without practice is sterile, and practice without theory is futile. And so the two go together. They're not separate from each other, and it'd be good to actually share that and share our experiences and how we can build up much more international solidarity, because it is international. But what we're doing here, we look at our local conditions, how we move forward here. It's not a one size fits all, but we can certainly share our experiences around the world. And I think it's vitally important, even more so now as the working class, as Marx said, workers of all countries unite. We need to actually get back into that again and start working internationally like that as well. We're not separate, we're not alone. And obviously those of us who enjoyed respective quality lives in countries such as Australia and New Zealand, dare say the US, but UK and Canada, for example, and Europe and the rest of Europe. Look, maybe it was revolution going to be happening tomorrow. No, but what we can do, we can start moving things on, working under the material conditions that are imposed on us. And it's a good time to do so as well. So big shout out to the comrades in the CPGMMLs and the Workers' Party over there. You're doing some brilliant stuff, fantastic stuff. I do enjoy it. I've actually been ordering some material, ordered books. So next lives I'll actually put these. I'll put their links in the description pages. So if you wanted to go straight to it, they have some excellent material as well. But going back to what I was talking about, the state of the economy here, we are obviously looking at that, and also too part of that. When I talk about the state of the economy, just how reliant we are on imports. Australia in its heyday, I will say about the circa 50s and 60s, that was the pinnacle of Australian manufacturing back then. We were actually one of the world leaders in it. We pretty much could have produced anything, even our government workshops and our railways, our dockyards, our public works, etc. We're actually all geared up. We could make anything. It was incredible. But unfortunately, because where capitalism has taken us down through this whole neoliberal free trade, slash and burn, every man for himself type atmosphere we've been through the last 40 years. That's all gone by the wayside. Now, a lot of our food production is now foreign owned. I did a little talk in one of my previous videos about that, and it was actually out of a conservative rural paper called the Weekly, and what they were talking about was basically who owns our food. The big Aussie food heist, they called it. And it was amazing just how many multinationals own our common brands here. Now, without saying, trying to team up with our bourgeois nationalists at all, which they only own 8 out of all the, I think, 35 brands we've got here. The reality is, at the end of the day, the question should be, then this would be a question about food security and national sovereignty and national security as well. I mean, we have decisions made in the boardrooms of London, New York, Tokyo, Zurich, and yes, even in Manila and Philippines there, and South Africa, making decisions on our food production here in Australia. Now, they could turn around, and I won't pick on any country, but turn around, one of the boardrooms overseas can say, well, we need to close these plants down in Australia because they're not making enough profit for us. Because that's what they've only in this business for is to make profit. And they don't see they're going to make enough for their profit, they'll close the plant down. Never mind about what ramifications over the community that's going to happen, the high unemployment and all the problems that go with that. And also too, about Australia's own security. Now we have to rely on other countries where we can bring our own food in. I mean, just how ridiculous is that? We are an island nation. Actually, we're taught this. Actually, Australia geographically is an island, the world's largest island nation. Most of our stuff is brought in by shipping. When does our shipping lines get affected? What then? We're going to starve? So, I mean, this whole thing is just crazy. The whole capitalist system is just crazy. You will not get common sense and logic out of it. If you're looking for common sense and logic, don't look towards capitalism. This is where we're vulnerable as a nation state as well. The other thing is just recently, I want to add on that, is the announcement by British Petroleum to close their oil refinery in Western Australia in Perth, which is on the Kwinana industrial strip there. Been around since the early 60s. Obviously, it's there as a stable part of Perth, of Western Australians' economy. They will now have to either rely on fuel, on petrol, on diesel, to be either imported from Singapore or brought in from interstate. Now, it's a good, I think, I'm led to believe about a good 3,000 kilometres from here to Perth. And the fact is, if anything could happen, they could bring Western Australia to a grinding halt. Now, I know we talk about clean energy, using electric vehicles, etc. And sure, that's in the pipeline, but it's not exactly here yet. We're still quite heavily dependent on oil. But this is a multinational made that decision to shut it down within the next few months as well. And 600 good unionised jobs are gone as well. So those good paying jobs, all they're going to use that refinery for is to store oil and gas, store petrol. So there you go, and this is the problem we've got, and also the problem we've got. Neither state nor Commonwealth governments have done anything about it. I actually made a comment on someone's Facebook page, a union leader from over Western Australia there, and people making the comments how bad it is. And I said, look, we need to have a fighting campaign, a fighting strategy to get that refinery back into public hands, aka nationalised for the common good. And obviously I've got quite a few likes to that as well, developing the strategy. And this is what we have to do. Instead of complaining about this is what we need to get out, put our minds together, our brains trust together, and start working out a strategy about grabbing all this infrastructure, all this resources back under the public ownership. And that's also the struggle for socialism for Australia as well, socialism with Australian characteristics. And you think to ourselves, as an island nation, our energy would be a priority. You would not rely on a multinational to make the decisions just like that on the snap of your finger to make a decision to close down refineries, plants, etc. But this is what they've done. So now it puts us even in a much more vulnerable case. If we're relying on imported fuel, and a lot of it comes from Singapore, it's refined there, or even from interstate, which I think we believe we've got 3 active refineries left now. For a population of 25 million, as I said, for some years around the world, that might sound small. It certainly is more worrying for us because now we're dependent on someone else for our energy security. So our food security, we're dependent on someone else, and now our energy sector as well, which then puts us in Australia into a frightening situation. So because if something happens, aka to our shipping lines, Australia will come to a grinding halt. You could just imagine the chaos and pandemonium that'll break out here in Australia. So part of our strategy is developing a big campaign how we get this back under public ownership here. And obviously, look, it's great to have, for some people out there and some people that are quite conservative, oh yes, it's under Australian ownership. Well, depends on what class you're looking at. And I think we do need to get public ownership back on the agenda again. We used to have it at one stage for everything, for development of our industries. And keeping in mind account too, I think we've just got to be a little bit fair dinkum about this. Just because it's under public ownership doesn't mean it's socialism either. Okay, when Australia was developing from the 1800s onwards, when it was from 6 separate colonies, and when it federated as a nation in 1901, 1st of January 1901, I understand because there was a lot of big government expenditure and investing into railways, dockyards, you name it, public works, etc. That was so they could develop capitalism further in this country. I said all the railways were under very respective government ownership, so is all public ownership, and so is a lot of our shipping, from our stevedoring through and our shipping lines as well. Australian National Line it was called. And obviously our big heavy engineering industries as well, such as Commonwealth Engineering, our respective state engineering departments, our dockyards. We had all that under government ownership, and which actually produced very high quality tradespeople out of that as well. When I was a young apprentice, I worked for actually A.E. Ginninan. It's now owned by Simico, which owns UGL, etc. That goes, there you go. Those of you know the name. It was actually based in Newcastle, but I worked in it when they took over a place in Sydney there. So I was very fortunate. But they've obviously all that's gone by the wayside now, and it's left Australia in a very vulnerable mode. So for us, as Marxists, communists, socialists, whatever we like to call ourselves, I think it's vitally important that we actually get hold of that agenda so it doesn't actually fall in the hands of the extreme right. And this is one way we can actually go out and engage with the masses. When Caleb Maupin said, let's get out of the masses, let's get out of the movement and let's get into the masses, this is a good way to discuss, especially in people in regional areas. I think people who are in regional areas would probably quite agree. We need to actually have control of our destiny again. So that one way we can start putting a good socialist agenda forward and start talking that way and said, well, how about we get this all back under our control? We're known as the Commonwealth of Australia. And interesting, when Caleb was talking about this morning, when he was a young boy in school, a young child in school, when his PE teacher explained to him, when he mentioned he was a communist, and he goes, oh, you mean, and Caleb mentioned to him what communism was all about. And he said, oh, you mean like in Canada, where they're a commonwealth. But look, no, not quite. We still didn't understand what was going on there. But certainly, I think we're going to understand ourselves. We need to actually get that all back under our control, and through that, we start developing some working class power as well again. Because Australia, we do need to have ourselves organised as a class. We are certainly not. We're not in a position to take anything on, in the sense we're going out to full-out general strike. We're 15% of the workforce is unionised, and this is now a perfect opportunity. We can start doing things around. So part of a strategy would be, let's get our collective heads together. Let's start having not just turning into a talk fest. What we want to do is a plan of action. How are we going to go out and communicate with common working class people? And like I said, when we talked about the right wing as well, the far right, this is why it's vitally important that we don't allow that agenda to fall into their hands. We need to get hold of the agenda again and put it into simple terms as well for working class people to understand. We don't need to go on with the complete language. And we start turning that on to turn it into a movement for social change from capitalism to socialism. And also, too, we shouldn't be afraid to actually sometimes have that discussion of what socialism is. I think because there's been, in Australia too, just like everywhere around the world, a lot of people been bombarded with this anti-communist, anti-socialist diatribe from our ruling class. Of course they do. Actually a good one I like pointing out to some people. Well, when people say, well, why are they so heavily critical of socialism? What are they worried about? If there's someone goes on about the USSR, being deliberately dismantled back in the late 80s, early 90s, that and socialism didn't work well. Maybe even here's another angle to throw at them. Well, why is the capitalist class spending all this amount of energy and time attacking Marxism? Why? It's because they know they're on the way out. And what we can do, some practical stuff, is when someone says, well, you're talking about socialism, it won't work. Well, hang on. Socialism turned the USS around from an illiterate backwater to a highly industrialised, highly industrial superpower by the 1940s as well. It defeated the monstrous Nazi machine, the most powerful military in the world, and rebuilt itself straight after. It put people into space as well and developed great medical breakthroughs as well. It also liberated the death camps of Nazi Germany as well and throughout Europe. It liberated people. It also, where socialism worked, look at China. China was the sick man of Asia in 1949. Look where it is now. It is now the biggest economy in the whole entire world. It's just recently superseded the United States. And of course, now the imperialists are really upset about this now. They're no longer number one anymore. They are losing their grip. So hence why these reactionary politics you're seeing coming forth in our respective countries. And they're making medical breakthroughs. China was the first country to warn us about this COVID-19. They warned everyone for the WHO, and Trump went on the rampage and blaming China, calling it the Wuhan flu or the China flu, not realise he had that information on his lap, on his desk, direct from the Chinese government. This is how it happened. You might need to prepare doing this. Instead, you listen to what Trump, and then obviously our government sort of jump on the bandwagon and bash China. Bad move. And you look at Cuba. Look what's happening here. They are world leaders in medicine. They send doctors and nurses everywhere around the world. In Venezuela, they turn things around magnificently. Yes, they're under a lot of sanctions and attack, but they're lifting them. But Venezuela's now setting its own course as well. So yes, socialism is working. It does work. But the thing is, what happens when socialism does come into being? It's always under consistent attack from the capitalist class. And of course, are we going to have problems? We're going to have problems. Of course we are. But we can overcome them. We put our collective heads together as well. Unlike in capitalism, cannot resolve any of these crises at all. I also like to big shout out to Helen Woolley. She's a very close friend and comrade of mine. Actually, Helen, I'll give you a call later on as well. I want to catch up with you sometimes as well. But just on that, we've just going back to what I was saying in capitalist crisis and then socialism as well. This is some aspect where we can develop a strategy. I think it's a good opportunity to do so, and I'd like to actually hear input from comrades around the world as well, where they're at and moving forward. And like I've said, I've actually taken my hats off to the comrades in Britain to do what they did with setting up the Workers' Party of Britain, and the CPGBMLs are doing some excellent work there as well. And also to the comrades like Dust and Caleb and everyone else in the US trying to get get their infrastructure going, and with the CPI, the Centre of Political Innovation USA. And I'd like to announce too, their next big Zoom in, or next big video conferencing is on the 21st of November of this month. I'm looking forward to watching it again. That first one you guys set up was just fantastic. I loved every minute of it as well. And I think I have talked to actually, I'll make it no secret, I spoke with Helen, who's just joined us, and also another comrade as well. We're talking about we'd like to set up a Centre of Political Innovation for Australia as well, moving forward. But look, it's just early discussions at the moment. We'll obviously, as things move on, we'll keep you all in the loop as that. So that's something that things are happening. Maybe slow at the moment, but they are happening regardless. Just that's where we are with the economy at the moment this afternoon too. Just on that, I've actually, even though today we're recognising it as a public holiday, just for those of you who want to know what's going on here in Victoria, where there seems to be, well, Australia and especially Victoria seems to be the only place in the world that will recognise a horse race and have a public holiday around it. It's Melbourne Cup Day. I'm not into gambling. I hate gambling. I think it's a despicable thing. People say, oh, it raises revenue for, no, it doesn't, causes more problems than what it's worth. Not into horse racing either. I won't go too much in it, but it's pretty much what goes in behind the scenes. A lot of cruelty towards animals as well. I won't get into it, but there was a very disturbing series that came out last year about what happens to racehorses when they're long gone. A lot of them do not go to the greener pastures, but wind up in the glue factory. So, and it's pretty depressing and pretty horrifying. So I'm not really very keen about it. Yes, I'm having the day off, but at 2:00 this afternoon, well, actually at 1:30, I have meeting with Lactalis, which, funny enough, I was just talking about our multinationals. Lactalis is a French multinational that owns some of our local brands here. Paul's Ice Cream, Paul's Custards. For those of you in Australia are familiar with it, we've been in negotiations now for the last month. It's ourselves, the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, Electrical Trades Union, and the United Workers Union. United Workers Union look after the production. Our union, AMW, looks after the fitters and the mechanical side, and the Electrical Trade Union looks after the electricians and the maintenance sector as well. So we're obviously we wanted to everyone wanted to bring their pays up to parity with the other Lactalis plant in Echuca, which is just an hour north of here in Bendigo, and obviously bring up some much better parity as well. And obviously the company was digging their heels in. But last week we lodged our first of all, we had our applications for the accepted by the Commission to have industrial action, and as from late last week, all three respective unions notified the company. So this Thursday and Friday is kicking off from, it probably no doubt work out to be an indefinite stoppage. Obviously through these live chats we'll be asking probably support in one way or the other as well. If those of you are in Victoria, and hopefully we'll wait till next week as well. I think a lot of people from Melbourne want to come out to regional Victoria, but if you happen to be by or come down, but there's a picket line, I expect is there as well. So that's the local sport. It's just, but also too, there's a good little lesson here learned. It might be a wages and conditions struggle, but it's still a form of class struggle. And it's a great way, if you ever want to see something in action, a picket line's a great place to have a discussion with workers as well, because they're a little more light, and it's more a matter of just fighting a bad employer. It's actually, we can actually have a discussion around about struggle and about the way forward as well. And there's union pickets, it's a great place to have them. It's a good one. It's a good place to have it. And of course, the reason being too in the past why it's been vitally important to work in unions, to be active in unions. That's where you have a concentrate of workers. Yeah, it might be around a wages and conditions issue, important, but that's why we need to help them develop even further. It's more than just a wages or an economic struggle. It's also a political and an ideological struggle, which all three forms of struggle go together. They're not separate. So that's happening. We've also got another struggle against another industrial struggle against GrainCorp. For those of you who are not familiar from overseas, GrainCorp is a major exporter of wheat and barley. And obviously, after the drought been breaking here in Eastern Australia, we have abundance crops. I've never seen so much wheat fields so thick in my whole entire life I've been alive on this planet, and even canola fields as well. But yeah, wheat, barley, it is going to be a record bumper crop, and And obviously now's the advantage with the workers there. I want to actually now, instead of being on the back foot for many years, accepting because of drought conditions, nothing was too well, except very minimal pay increases there. Now I want to bring their parity up. So now, once again, ourselves, the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, Electrical Trade Union, looking after the maintenance side, we're certainly going for that. They've at the moment got limitations and bans. I've got to tomorrow morning, first thing, catch up with the ETU organiser, and we will certainly be talking about a strategy moving forward. The company is trying to dig their heels in as well, as they would. So that's where that's at the moment. But it's a great time to actually start talking about it. And I've been actually a little bit of discussion on political economy to those workers as well, where profits is made, where they create wealth, but it's mainly taken off them, and they're given a little back as a wage as well. So it's a great way to discuss all that. Way to working class people as well. So that's where we're at the moment with the economy, and those type of struggles will be intensifying further. I can see it then up to Christmas, but even well after into the new year as well. I've got quite a few more companies are ready for negotiation next year, so it'll be interesting. They'll be definitely smelling that whiff of blood, and they will certainly want to have their pound of flesh back as well. So those struggles will be intense as well, and we'll obviously keep you posted there. So that's where that's at the moment. The economy itself overall, as like I was saying with that article in the AHS today about insolvencies are going to surge after a retail bonanza. Reality is, keep workers oppressed and keep their wages and conditions so low. If they can't afford, what does the capitalist class expect? So that's where we're at the moment. The other thing I actually just want to make comment, you probably all realise the last 2-3 hours, the attacks in Austria, Vienna there, or apparently ISIS elements as well. Look, my heart goes out to all those out there, being the victims, but also the people of Austria as well. But the thing is too, all these attacks we've seen by extremists, by terrorist groups and stuff, were the capitalist class's own making as well. And look, I was reading a bit of a article from our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, this morning. He's putting out a press release, putting his heartfelt, sincere thoughts to the Austrian people. And I thought, well, how dare you? Not just him, but even previous Prime Ministers caught us up in so much in US foreign policy that this is all part of our making. Australia is not immune from this. We've all been behind this whole Australian this whole US Western back imperial coups and that in the US, in the Middle East as well, be it from Libya, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. Australia's been there as well. And for them to turn around and say that, I thought, you hypocrites, you got us all into this mess. You set up all these groups. You helped arm these groups. And now you turn around and want to put a message like that out. Well, sorry, but now the chickens have come home to roost, and this is the problem we've got here. And we've actually too, during that time, especially with what happened with Syria, there were a lot of there was quite a fair few people living in Australia went over to fight for ISIS. They got caught eventually, but then they're certainly not welcome back here either. But this is it. But the federal government allowed it to happen. Why? Because we're getting our orders from Washington again. Because we're all caught up with them between that US foreign policy, that imperial policy as well. And yes, look, just for your information, you know too, the Australian Air Force was heavily involved in the bombing of Syria. And no doubt we're also heavily involved in the heavy bombing of Iraq, originally back in the 2000s, and in Afghanistan as well. And obviously now we're hearing more of Australian war crimes in Afghanistan as well through the SAS. So, just give me a water for a sec. So, we're seeing that. So when I saw that article from the Prime Minister, I thought, well, you complete hypocrite. You know full well, actually, what you've done and your respective governments have done over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and now it's all come around and biting everyone in the backside about that. Got to keep my swearing down a little bit on these things, just because I don't want these videos completely censored altogether. So that's like where we're at. So look, my heart vexed, but this is just also to aftermath is what's happened. And obviously people of Europe and no doubt the UK have felt many attacks over the last 10, 15 years. But just remember, who was actually completely responsible for it. Yeah, they like to say, oh, it was an ISIS attack or Al-Qaeda and that, but who set these organisations up in the first place? And also, what I actually point out on that, when I was talking something back in September about the 9/11 attacks, there was a good series I watched on YouTube I bought. It was The Looming Tower. And it was actually going back to when the respective government authorities in the US around about the 1990s period, all leading up to it. You had the CIA, the FBI, they seemed to be at each other's throats all the time. And it was like a competition, who was the better organisation in that, and also all the information that was given to both the Clinton administration and the Bush administration when George Bush became president over there, and just amount of covering up and all that, and just amount how they knew full well that these people were already in the US by then. If anything, I think there's a big push to actually have another 9/11 inquiry. What I also would be great to have a complete inquiry into whole imperialist adventures overseas overall, and be surprised what's revealed. I think a lot more people will be have their eyes open to actually what's been going on. But it just shows you the US government knew full well these people were in that country, and they knew an attack was inevitable, and they did nothing about it to protect their own people. So it just comes to show you, the respective authorities, what they really think of us as well. If anything that was covered up was not just incompetence, but also the lack of duty of care for anyone, for their own people as well. So that's something worthwhile to have a think about. At the same time, I'm not going to get into the whole discussion about 9/11 again, but there is a good series. I actually highly recommend it. You can actually just type that in the Google and the YouTube channel, and yeah, you can actually purchase it. It's a good series to watch. So that's pretty much where we're at the moment. Once again, look, for the elections, I do feel for everyone in America. I think at the moment, bless you, our good comrades over there. Look, I'll just in the same time, look, I'll ask you all to stay safe. Caleb asked us to stay, also put that out this morning, and I'm going to say the same thing. It's not worth actually giving your life for or being badly injured for between Trump and Biden. Let those two fight out. Let those people who really get behind them, be it the rad libs, that or the Trump supporters and the fascists, let them all fight that out. That's not really by rights our fight. If we're going to struggle for a government of action that fights for working people, we need to be organised and start getting out of the movement and getting into the masses and start engaging, getting organised. We're not in a position to take it on like that. Because I got asked the same question: who would you prefer, Trump or Biden? And I'm just going, neither. To be honest with you, he put a gun to my head. I'm not going to choose either side. Basically, Trump is obnoxious. He's stupid. He's lambastic. He's achieved nothing as well. But he represents, he's a stupid evil. But you've got Biden. Yeah, his condition of his mind is not there, but he's a sinister evil as well. So, but look, as George Galloway would say, rather one, you're voting for evil at the end of the day. There's no lesser of two evils as well. And I think we've got to get away from that argument, the lesser of two evils. You're still voting evil. And I'm actually really concerned if Biden does get in, it won't be him that we need to be worried about, but the person behind him would be Kamala Harris. She is just psycho. And obviously what will happen there, again, I did mention this before, if any one of those people all those people who got behind Bernie Sanders, well, you won't see another likes of Bernie Sanders again be able to be involved in the Democratic Party over there. It will be just part of the established Washington elite over there as well. I saw a post from Trump on Twitter this morning. He's talking about all these great things he does and what he stands for against the Washington elite. I wrote an expletive back and I said, "You've done sweet FA, really." Yeah, but it's just shows you what he represents, the other side of the wealthy, the small fracking companies. I'm not going to start, but yeah, the fracking companies and other parts of finance capital as well, where Biden Democrats represent big oil, or big bank, oil bankers, etc. So you can see the two factions of the ruling class playing it out here. But look, obviously, I've said when I've heard information what's going on in the US, stay safe. It's not worth it actually at this moment to actually go out and put yourself at risk as well. We need you for the long term. You've obviously, your struggle is going to intensify anyway further, but we need to be ready and we need to be organised as well. Running ad hoc. Look, I would accept whatever strategy, maybe here's some suggestion for you guys. Yeah, start talking about workers' rights over there, against any imperialist wars, etc. Any other type, start engaging with the population that way. You've got a lot there, but again, between the Democrat Republican fight, it's not. I think so at this time, I'm not going to tell you not to vote. I won't do that. Obviously, once again, I'll make that loud and clear. But I'd say actually risking your life for and risking your well-being, don't put yourselves at risk at the moment. It's not necessary. So just as Comrade Reece said here, Britain is exactly the same in bed with US imperialism. Yeah, we're all part of that Anglo-American bloc, be it in Canada, UK, or Britain, New Zealand and Australia here as well. So we're all part of that as well, and tied up with US foreign policy. So just go over that, stay safe over there. Obviously, we'll be doing more of these live streamings, and just beware, keep in mind the Centre of Political Innovation will be having their next big live conference on the 21st of November. No doubt Caleb and the others will be putting the details out there. And for us, for me, I'm now doing lives with Dust James, who are Working Class Revolt. We did our one last Sunday. That was really good to talk about strategies and other interesting matters as well. And obviously next Sunday, I nearly forgot, I did say it was 11 a.m. our time here. No, it's not, because daylight savings is finished in the US. It will still be 8 o'clock in the morning 8 p.m. Saturday night for them. It will be 12 o'clock here during the day. So there's a 16-hour time difference. I totally forgot about that, and I'll mention 11. So we'll get those details out. We're hoping you tune in for that. We're talking about having guests on there as well. It'd be good to have various guests. So look, put your name forward. Just send me a message on Facebook Messenger. For those of you that are not friends with me on Facebook, just find my name, David Fox. You'll see a fox's head. That's me. Click onto it, and I'll certainly try and respond to you as well. Either send me a message either via Twitter or through here as well, through these chat sessions as well, so I can get your details and we'll work from there. Well, look, that's pretty much it today. I'm going to wind this up. I think it's been a great one to talk to you guys. I'll be doing more live chats. I'll also do little 10-minute ones or so. It's handy to have this little phone. This is not my work phone. It's my personal one. It's a Huawei. I bought it deliberately to give the big middle finger to Trump, our Australian government, and to any other imperialist bastards, because it's majority worker owned. It's a really good quality phone. Sit on that iPhone. And put that in your pipe and smoke it. So that's it's a great little thing. So I'll just set that up and I'll just do a 10-minute recording or so, and then load that up to the YouTube channel. But share this far and wide, subscribe to it. Share it up on Facebook or any other social media forums. We have a lot more to do that. And if you're interested in doing an interview or an online study, let me know. I'd love to do any of them. I'd love to do that as well. So I'll leave that now, comrades and folks, and I wish you all the best. Stay safe once again, and look, let's keep our eyes on the bigger fight. And I always like to say this: revolution is, well, I'll add this one, what Caleb's used to said, revolution is the trend today. I like to add it off: dare to struggle, dare to win. If you don't fight, you lose. Thank you.